And we are live. Quick introduction, myself, GP with JT, and we joined all the way from Switzerland by Mr. Edgington. Paul Edge, how are you, mate?
Pleasure, guys. Look, lovely to be connected with you. I told my missus a couple of days ago I was going to do this, and you know, my missus is Swiss, right? And they're very straight. And she said, "Why did they choose you?" Right? And I said, well, you know, it's a couple of lads from Swansea, right? You know, as guys I know, you know, we're a good community. She said, yeah, but are you entertaining enough? So the challenge was already there from when my missus. So, you know, pleasure to be connected with you guys. I've really enjoyed watching all the broadcasts you did throughout the lockdown. You know, it was great to watch a couple of the interviews that you've already done as well. And we didn't talk about my fee, right, by the way. And I was wondering, how much does Paddy Cullen get paid these days for an hour?
What?
A t-shirt, wasn't it?
2 packets of crisps and a 4-pack, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I think he just ended up with a t-shirt.
Whatever he got, I'm about half. So I'll be
right, okay.
I'll be fine with that.
Send me an invoice after we finish.
I will, with pleasure. And, you know, Paddy talked to me a little bit about what he was doing with the AIC podcast as well, and he's doing great stuff. And you know, I think all of the guys who are making efforts to do something for the community throughout that last few months, you know, I mean, I'm out in Switzerland. You know, we'll talk a little bit more about, you know, why I'm here, how I came here and all that.
Yeah.
But, you know, I stay very well connected to back home.
Yeah.
You know, my parents are still there. My sister's there. All the roots are still there. But mostly, you know, just still feeling part of the community back home is really important for me. So, you know, the guys I was going to give a shout out to, you know, there's obviously Ed Kerno for what he's been doing with the lockdown, kitchen lockdown show. I thought that was brilliant when that first started. And Ed and I have a connection as well, which is also a topic we'll get to regarding music and DJing, because he was very instrumental in my whole start there with the love of music. Obviously, you guys doing what you're doing there with the 100% old school. And, you know, we had the tunes blasting out here, all the shows, whenever we could get it on. You know, some of my friends over here were really impressed with the good taste in music and stuff, you know. And, you know, we navigated the period out here, which very similar to the UK, but on a different timeline, because we got hit with COVID a bit earlier than you guys. And in Switzerland, we didn't really mess around. It was like, as soon as there was a problem, they sent us all home from work, closed the schools, you know, switched off all the public transport. So I was explaining to my parents and my mates back home, like, what was going on. And they were almost laughing. They were like, really? Like, is it worth it? Like, is it really that much of a problem? And then about 3 weeks later, that's when, you know, the UK went kind of the same way and tried its best to, you know, to stay out of trouble there. But I mean, what a period it's been, guys. I mean, you know, it's been nuts, you know. So, and I know it's not really over yet for you guys. I mean, I've heard now sort of more and more on the restrictions being loosened up and stuff, but I know it's still a way to go yet.
So where are you with it all, Paul? Have you got any restrictions on you now in Switzerland?
Currently, look, the last milestone is in about 3 weeks. And that really is like normal all over again, right? To be honest, I was very impressed with the way Switzerland dealt with it overall, the government here. And, you know, we have several countries around the border, right? And Italy, where is literally just, the Alps are just behind me, guys. You can see. The other side of that mountain is literally, you know, the entry point to France and Italy. Yeah, exactly. The car's burning. It's Kill the Hill. I'm lying. Right? But, you know, I was impressed with the way they handled it. It happened all so fast. I hadn't even really given much thought to, whether or not we were at risk, because the cases were in the single figures at the time, and then Italy was kicking off, northern Italy.
Yeah.
And my wife, her father texted us and basically said, it was a Thursday morning, saying like, this weekend you need to get all your tins and your pasta in, because Switzerland's going to be locking down. My missus was really upset. She got very panicked. We have a kid, he's 5 years old. And, the school was probably looking at closing, and it all happened very fast. And then by the Sunday of that following week, we pretty much locked down the country. And the restrictions were very, very tight. We could go out, to do recreation and stuff, but everything was closed except for the supermarket and the pharmacy. And that was pretty much it. And then when they started releasing or easing off the restrictions, it all happened very fast. Like within a 3-week period, it was almost like nothing had happened. But yeah, what a period! What a period!
The country made a decision to lock down really early, which is a decision that didn't happen in the UK, unfortunately.
Right.
They probably left it about 10 days too late, because they allowed for the Cheltenham Festival to happen, and then the Liverpool Atletico Madrid game and stuff like that. And I think Boris wanted to keep the pubs open a little bit longer, really, so to keep the economy going. I know that sounds fickle, but that's probably pretty accurate.
I think the economic side of it. I mean, without going too much into the detail, because my experience here is very different to the experience in the UK. Sure. Even I was at loggerheads with my dad for a while. My dad works sort of with the NHS, right? He's not a nurse or a doctor, but he spends his days in the hospitals.
Right.
And my dialogue with him was around like, how much of a risk is there for you, and he's 62, 63 now. He's in pretty good shape, but I just wasn't comfortable with the way the UK responded early in its response, right? I'm very neutral on the government. I'm neither left or right, actually. And that's probably driven more by the fact I've lived in Switzerland for 12 years, which is a very neutral country as well. And I think there was definitely opportunities for improvements if that ever happened again. But then, let's hope it doesn't happen again. And on the tail end of Brexit, that was really a hell of a couple of months, from January right through to today. I don't think anyone wanted to be in Boris Johnson's shoes, at all. In fact,
No, maybe no. I can buy that, Paul. Definitely. I think that all of this will come out in the wash. I dare say, when once all of this is wrapped up, there'll be a bit of a review, and people will then make a decision as to whether they think it was done good, bad, or indifferent. And it is a difficult one, because obviously, because this has never happened before, there's no precedent for you to work towards, no time frame and things like that. And the way that it moves through the community seems to differ from country to country, and they obviously haven't got a grip on all of that yet. And I just think, look, at the end of the day, the decision that's got to be made at the moment now is the economy or people's lives. And it is a difficult one. It's a difficult one, of course, that's because there's an argument to say that now that the death numbers are dropping off, and look, you only have to have a look around Swansea, for an example, right? And it's getting busy out there. It's getting busy.
I mean, once you let and Greg, back to your question, when you let the brakes off, like when, and even a quite conservative country, right? People are very discreet here. Is a different culture entirely to what I expect back home, right? Not one is not better than the other. It's just different, right? But when the brakes came off here, and it was like, okay, you can go back out again, right? Kind of, that's how it felt, right? It was like getting back out of jail.
Yeah.
And, you know, where we live is in it's the wine growing part of Switzerland, right? So there's a lot of vineyards around here. And generally on weekends, when the weather is good, you'll get quite a few people walking around near the house and stuff. Sure. And man, that first Saturday, when they basically said, you know, you're free now, you know.
Yeah.
There was a lot of restrictions still, but it was kind of, because people work in that way. Is like, if it's more complicated than a light switch, I can't understand it, you know. So am I out or am I in? and as soon as everyone was out, I remember saying, fuck me, like, you know, it's like Mardi Gras out there. And we went for a stroll in the afternoon, you know, and my missus was like, let's just go back home. There was just so many people out there, you know, and I think the frustration of probably the certain groups that don't get it, right? And let's be honest, there is a group that don't get it. And it doesn't mean they're right or wrong. It just means, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to believe in it. I don't really think it's that risky. Anyway, it could happen to me and whatever the fuck, if it does, so what? Yeah. So there's that group of people that really were like, if I'm out, I'm out, and I'm going out and I'm seeing my friends. I'm taking the barbecue. You know, we'll do 2 meters. Well, 2 meters, right? Yeah. Sometimes you could have put 30 centimeters between people. And they were sitting down there, like, you know, barbecuing sausages, having a good time. And, you know, you want to see, I think you want to see people feel like they have the freedom to do what you have to do, right? And this put a lot of things into question, not at the governmental level for me. This was like, you know, what is it fundamentally that you really enjoy in life, right? And how fragile that is. Meaning, like, you know, just tomorrow, you know, you could be locked down in your home again with all those freedoms taken away. And the only kind of experience I wondered that related a little to it was probably the experience that my grandparents had living through, you know, the war, right? Yeah. When my grandmother, on my mother's side, you know, she was all the families from Swansea for generations, right? So when we got hit in the war, my grandmother's memories were really vivid, and you know, she would tell me about like going off with other families that weren't her family and stuff. Yeah. And you know, when I was a kid, man, listening to that, it was so surreal. You were like, fuck, you know, those were the worst times that anyone is ever going to have to live, right? Yeah. And another thing that this whole period made me think about was just how soft we are, right, in general. And I know that doesn't apply to everybody. I don't want to generalize, but as a generation, right, meaning everyone who's alive today, soft in the sense that we're vulnerable. And I wondered if my grandmother and my grandfather, all my grandparents are no longer around, but you know, that generation for me was like a tough ass generation, you know, and we still, you know, like myself compared to the average Swiss person, you know, I'm like, Jesus Christ, sometimes I can't cope here. You know, it's very soft. You know, I think if you grew up in Swansea, you still have a very working class, get on with the attitude, you know, but even people that I grew up with and, you know, knew very well had moments of softness, I would say, through that whole that period, questioning things in a way that just, you know, made me question the morals a little bit, right?
Of course. So, right, let's get into the news again, Paul.
Shall we?
Let's not do politics anymore. We'll get on to religion in a bit.
There's a segue into the music actually through the whole COVID experience. And I remember I was talking to Dan Gilmore from time to time. I mean, I don't know who doesn't know Dan Gilmore, right? You know, Dan was actively promoting, I think it was Ed's show, And I think it was the first one I watched. And, you know, there was such this great, like, gravity towards Ed's show. And I'm not sure whether his was the first, Greg. Were you guys first?
We were definitely first.
I thought so. I was not. But Ed's was the first one that I managed to have a break and watch, right?
Yeah.
And I remember Dan was actively promoting it, and I got in there and stuff. And then watched your show. And afterwards, you know, I was exchanging a few text messages with him. And I said, you know what? This is great. I said, for me, and I'm far away, but it was like the first time I felt like people were going back to music like it was a sanctuary again.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know how you felt about it, but the way that, like, people were sharing the links, and, you know, I was getting SMSs from people saying, are you listening to the show tonight, or are you locked in because it's on now and he's killing it and stuff? You know, it was like the first time in years that I felt like that energy was like I used to know it when we were all going out, you know, every week, 3 nights a week, you know. So somehow the love of music started coming back again. And I really mean love, but for that specific type of music and this community, you know, this crowd, you know, it was great. There was people I saw commenting on the show that I haven't seen their name for like 10 years, you know?
Yeah. It has brought everybody back together, so to speak, innit? And with new introductions as well. So on the music thing, obviously, one of the reasons why we got you on here is because you're a long-time DJ. Are you still DJing now, Paul?
I have my turntables set up in the living room.
Okay.
I have a good stock of records here.
Yeah.
Do I still DJ? I play on them often.
Yeah.
I'm retired. However, occasionally I get the opportunity to play. The music scene out here in Switzerland is very good.
Okay.
And the boyfriend of the sister of my missus, her boyfriend, he's like the equivalent of you, Greg, here, you know, million followers. He puts a gig on, everyone comes to it, you know, and he's 25 now. So he grew up, obviously, you know, I'm 42. So we have a big gap between us, but he and I, you know, we sit for hours and talk about what it was like in the 90s and stuff, you know, and man, it makes me feel old sometimes, but it also makes me feel really like I lived that time that, you know, those guys will never know. Like, it's totally different now. And again, not good or better or worse, but
just different, isn't it?
I think I'm retired, but, you know, if someone calls me up and says, we got a party, do you want to come along and bring your records or play a few? I'm usually, if I'm available, I'll usually come. But, you know, even when I was actively DJing, the reasons I did it were, and it goes a long way back, even to childhood, right? You know, I was moving around a lot in my youth, and my dad's military. He was Royal Navy. We moved a lot. By the age of 4, I was born in Morriston, Swansea. By the age of 4, I'd already been Wales, England, and then Portugal. We lived in Portugal for a couple of years. Small village called Cascais near to Lisbon, and then back to Portsmouth in the UK. I went to a boarding school at the age of 7, right? And I remember there's very specific memories around this age, and I remember at 7 years old going to this boarding school in the south of England, a small village called Hayling Island, and there were 15 kids in a class, and everyone was from a different country, right? And I was like, you know, I want to go home kind of feeling, you know. But I remember having a conversation with my mother, and she was like, well, this is home, you know. I guess I kind of referred to my Welsh roots but then accepted that this was my new reality. And so I stayed in a boarding school for 2 years with many different kids from all over the world. I was a bit of a loner, like my being on my own and do my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we eventually moved back to Wales when I was 10 years old. You know, it was an important time for anyone, I think, that age. And, you know, my mum and dad, they explained to me we were moving back. It all happened very fast. And I went from, you know, being in a boarding school to then being in Winch Wen Bonnie Mine, you know. And my dad, you know, I remember that my dad on the weekend before going to the school, and the school year had already started, right? So these kids, he was like, they've all grown up together. They all know each other. They know their fathers, their mothers, their brothers, their grandfathers, and you don't know anybody, right?
Yeah.
So, and I had a really strong English accent, right? Just to make it even more interesting. And so I go to the school, right? I go to the school on the Monday morning, and man, what an experience, you know. I was like, fuck, you know, I'm not gonna make it through the day, like, you know. and you know, I had my pencil case stolen, I had my bag nicked, you know, my jacket went missing. I realized that when I stood up at the front of the class and introduced myself, I think half the boys in the school were doing this to me and stuff, you know. And I had to take my birth certificate to school just to prove I was Welsh, you know. So you know, and that experience as a young kid,
Mm-hmm.
you know, somehow that like laid the foundations for me almost for the rest of my life, you know. And I discovered sport at the age of 11, and that was similarly to music. You know, sport was like my first like anchor that I could hold on to survive. And I really mean this, to survive, right? I started to get beaten up pretty much from day one, right? When I moved back to Wales. Yeah. And they just, you know, it was because I was different. You know, I had a different accent. I have a fucking different accent now. You know, I don't sound like I'm from Bonnie Mine, do I, right? But, you know, I had a different accent. You know, my clothes were a bit different. My mother put me in a pink fucking cardigan, man. You know, on my first day, a pink fucking cardigan, right? You know, and I go into school, you know, right in the middle of Bonnie Mine, and everyone was just like, who the fuck is this guy? You know? And then I had no sporting prowess whatsoever, man. You know, I was a very lanky kid, you know, no balance. And I didn't give a shit about sport. I wanted to learn, right? And that was the other thing. I was into studies, man. You know, so it was worst case scenario, right? So, you know, after about 6 months getting my ass kicked, you know, eventually my dad was away a lot. I mentioned he was in the military, right? So he wasn't around. And my mother, you know, I didn't really sort of tell her like, oh, I'm getting my ass kicked at school, you know, because my dad was always from a young age, like, you the man of the house, you know, even from 10 years old. So I had to try and figure out how to get through that. And then my uncle, my mother's brother, played for the Swans, right, in the 80s, 70s and 80s. Played with Alan Curtis, played with Nigel Stevenson. He was a fullback, Stephen Morris, long blonde hair, brilliant fullback. And, you know, he took me out. We were in the Glamorgan Arms, right? And we were out one Sunday afternoon and having a lunch. And he's like, how's school going? And I just started crying, right? I was like, I fucking hate it. Full of fucking idiots. They all kick my ass every day. And he was like, what the fuck? Like, you tell your mother? I was like, I don't tell my mother. I'm not a crybaby, you know, whatever. And he's like, look, man, you got to learn to play football. Yeah. He was like, you gotta find a way to get in with these kids, right? And we literally, he had a ball in the car, and we there in the Glamorgan Arms, you know, remember the old boat swings?
I do. Yeah. I do remember them.
They might even still be there.
No,
and we were literally by the boat swings on the grass, and he's like, with a football going, right, show me what you got kind of thing, right? And it was like the first time I kick a ball in my life, right? And he was like, fuck, man, this is going to be a long summer, right? And he was like, oh man, you really are shit, right? You know, and he's like, I understand why they fucking beat you up. You know, it's amazing. So my uncle, you know, spent some time with me trying to help me with the fundamentals, right? You know, the basics. Running, passing, you know, trapping the ball. And he was like, look, when you go back to school in September, you know, you're going to try out for the team, right? And I was like, okay, yeah, the football team. He's like, well, yeah, you're going to learn to play football. You're going to play for the football team. And of course, the vision I had of the football team, if you've seen the movie Space Jam with Michael Jordan, you know those monsters, right? The cartoon monsters, exaggerated in size. That was like the image I had of the football players in my head. I was like, fuck, man, they're going to kill me. And so I played football through the summer and practiced like hell. My uncle used to drive me out in the middle of nowhere so that no one from like Bonnymine, Portena, and St. Thomas could see me. Yeah. Number one, because I was so fucking embarrassing. Number two, because it was like a special project. He was like, you know, we surprise everyone when you get back in school, right? So, you know, worked really hard on football and then came back to the school in the September and, you know, tried out for the team and found myself in midfield and actually did okay, you know, actually did very good. And my uncle was there and he was on the sideline shouting at me like, you know, run, you fucker, you know, and no, left, you know, and all this. It was great. It was a brilliant experience, you know, and somehow, you know, so sports, you know, was a savior at first. And I'm talking 10, 11 years old, right?
Yeah.
And then something great happened, you know, I started to grow, like really grow. Yeah. And the second year in that school, even though I've been playing football, we had a new PE teacher come to the school. It was Kevin Engoy, and he wanted to start a basketball team. And you know, I turned up to the practice, and I was the only one there. I remember, like, there was the only one there, and he was like, "Well, are we going to build a team with one player?" But we shot around for a couple of hours, and you know, next thing I know, I was like, this is a great game. I enjoy this. And I was getting to know him. I was getting to know the coach. And then he was kind of saying, like, can we get some of the rugby boys? Because, you know, rugby and basketball has some similarities in it. And before I knew it, you know, we had within a couple of weeks, we had like 12 boys playing basketball. And then that became my sport. You know, that became my thing that I really enjoyed.
Your protege is sitting by you.
Yeah, that's how we met, Paul. I'm not sure if you remember, but we used to practice down the park behind my house, down Llansamlet.
Shit, yeah.
Do you remember playing with the little kid all the time?
That, but I don't remember that we met there. Really?
We used to play all the time. Just me and you for a long, long time.
Man, that's a blast from the past, man. I used to love walking over there. I remember I played with some decent boys over there. That's why I used to come over there.
And Greg.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing.
Do you know what? For a midget, I wasn't too bad as it goes. It was all right. It was all right.
There's another, actually, you know Denty, right? Carl Dent.
Yeah.
That's another kid that came in my mind recently when I was thinking about the old days playing on the playgrounds, because he used to live over by Dilwyn Llewellyn, where I played for years, and he would come over and we'd shoot around and stuff, and he was a protege as well. But yeah, man, the basketball was and still is, you know, somehow a sport that like taught me a lot, gave me a lot of opportunity. And then by the time I finished Kevin Engoy, you know, I was pretty much, you know, in my space doing my thing with basketball. And when I went to the college, to Swansea College, you know, I was with boys from all over Swansea, Bishop Gore, you know, Olfa and stuff, and those guys could play, right?
Yeah.
Those guys could play, and we got a team together that stuck together we played for the college, and we also played for the Swansea local team, which are now called the Storm. Back then they were called Dylan's Bookmen, and yeah, we were sponsored by one of the players, Joe Towns, his dad, Jeff, owned Dylan's bookstore in Salubrious Passage, you know,
That's
next
it,
door
right
to
by Indigo.
Indigo, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we had them sponsored, and we used to, I mean, we'd play like 6 days out of 7, right? We became really, really good mates. We had several ages of teams, you know, levels and stuff. And then I started coaching the youth team as well. And basketball, and and I appreciate, I've been talking a long time about sports, but basketball was the way in to DJ. And how that happened was, it was interesting because I was so focused on basketball, I didn't think of anything else other than basketball and girls, and that was about it, right?
Yeah.
And I got injured, and it was 1996, right? I was 18 years old. I just got engaged, as you do, to a girl from St. Thomas. Never a good choice. And, you know, I got injured, and I was really pissed because it was the first time in my life, you know, I got injured to a point where like I couldn't play, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, this sucks. What am I going to do with my time, right? And at the time, I was working in Sainsbury's down in Swansea, you know, Park Towie there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of the guys I used to work evenings with after college, guy named Dave Salmon. And we were hanging out, and he was basically like, why don't we go to Quids Inn tonight and have a few, right? Mm. And we go to Quids Inn, and actually it was called Martha's then days, right?
Yeah, it was.
And we go to Martha's, and I walk in to a fucking rave, right? And I'm like, this is the first time I've ever been to a rave, right? I've never been to a rave. And there was like guys and girls I knew from college, right?
Yeah.
Looking like dog shit, right? Like, fuck, they not drunk, they something else, right? And bearing in mind now, I'm a clean kid, right?
Yeah.
I'm an athlete, guys, right? I'm studying to, you know, have the best career I can find, and I'm a basketball player. And Dave was like, come on, man, let's get fucked, right? And I'm like, what does that actually mean in my head, right? You know, I'm going up the stairs, and man, the music's like thumping, right? And literally my chest is fucking moving, right? But I'm like, you know, this is all right, actually. You know, it's not bad, like. And the smell in there was fucking terrible, you know. And I was like, all right, but the music's good. Let's go and have a drink. So we're at the bar, and you know, and it's fucking noisy as hell in there. What a sweat pit, and you know, people like the craziest dress sense I've ever seen. Everyone had like gloves, white fucking gloves on, and I'm like, what a fucking zoo, right? But I liked it. I thought it was cool, you know. I was like, okay, I'm digging it. And it took my mind off that night. The boys were playing basketball match. I wasn't there, so it took my mind off it. I was like, fuck it. So, you know, I have a few drinks, and then I down some shots, and then he drags me on the dance floor, and it was a strictly groovy night, right? By the way, and guy named Lindsay Martin, who used to be a big deal, actually. I didn't know him at the time. We went on to become mates. He worked in Derek's Records.
He's my best man, Paul. He was my best man at my wedding.
Woo!
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got that connection. So yeah. Lindsay, you know, was working the turntables, right? And I'm watching it. I'm focused on him, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, that guy's having a great time. Like he's and I'm bouncing off his energy. I'm like, oh, this is great. You know, I'm enjoying the music. I'm loving this. I didn't give a shit about who was there or drugs or, you know, getting drunk. I was into the music. And anyway, cut a long story short, I woke up in Dave's house in the morning on the sofa. And my mate Dave comes downstairs, and he's like, what a fucking night last night, you know? And I was like, man, when can we go out again?
Right.
When can we go out again? And he was like, well, we can go out again tonight if you want. You know, there's a good night on in Escape, right?
Mm.
And, you know, I'm like, okay, it's a new club, you know, it just opened, and, you know, let's do it. So we go out, and we go out and do the same thing all over again. And then, you know, before you know it, I'm stealing all the CDs from his house, right? He's got a great collection of music, and I'm like, I'm having these. And I was into rap, hip hop, you know, basketball culture. So I was listening to that, and all of a sudden I was like, fuck that shit. I want to listen to some more of that house music, you know?
Yeah.
And there was one CD which he was like, man, you got to buy your own copy of this one. You know, you got to get your own copy.
You can't steal mine.
Yeah. And it was Ministry of Sound, Dance Nation 2, right?
Right.
I have my copy, you know, pride and place in the collection. And it was 2 CDs mixed. One was mixed by Pete Tong, and the second one was Boy George. And inside was a poster. And the poster was about, you know, this big, and it had a map of the UK.
Yeah.
And it was titled Club Country. And it had a map of the top 10 clubs in the UK.
Yeah.
And in Wales, there was Martha's Strictly Groovy on the map, right? And I was like, fuck, that was where we were last Friday. Like, this is fucking great. So, you know, I started hammering this, and I had a CD, and a portable CD player at the time. And I used to listen to those CDs, like, you know, 5 times a day, right?
Jesus.
And then, you know, I was like, how do they get like blend of music? You know, I was talking to myself while listening. I recognized that bit of music.
Yeah.
What I would later learn was a sample, and then how do they put that in with that other bit? And that's amazing. And then the next time I went to Strictly, you know, on the next event, you know, I would be closer to the DJ booth, trying to see how like they were operating and how they were moving the stuff around. And I realized it was quite, in principle, it was quite easy. It was like, turntables, and then a thing in the middle that blended the music together. I didn't even know it was called a mixer, right? And, you know, I started hanging out then at Derek's Records, HMV in the Quadrant.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, they had, if you remember, Greg, there was the old HMV was round by Debenhams, you know, in the corner there.
Yeah, that's right.
And they used to have a great vinyl collection, and they had a listening post.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I remember my first vinyls that I bought. You know, one was the first record I ever bought was Tori Amos, Professional Widow.
Yeah. What a fucking
Van
tune.
Helden remix, you know.
What a fucking tune to start yourself off with.
But that was the thing. It was like, it wasn't a coincidence, you know. It was like the quality was so rich, you know. The quality was so good. It was like, how can you not like this music, you know?
Yeah.
And the second record I bought was by Sash, Encore une fois, you know, which was a little bit more on the cheese side. But to be honest, I had 10 quid, and I had 10 quid, and the Tori Amos record cost me £7, and I only had £3 left. And I remember like, oh, that one's got a decent rhythm, and I think I heard Lindsay play it last Friday, so I'm obviously going to buy that.
Yeah. And
then, you know, I didn't have turntables, right? Obviously, I was just getting into the scene.
Yeah.
My dad had a record player on his MIDI hi-fi, you know. And I got home, and I plugged in the headphones, and I'm listening to the vinyl on the record, and it was a great moment. You know, I was like, this is amazing. I love this. And then I was like, okay, you know, raiding my piggy bank every week to go back to the record shop and start to buy records. And then by the time I had a record collection that was about that thick, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I bought, but I was so proud of them. Then I wanted to, you know, sort of figure out how I could get more into the scene, right? Into the scene somehow. And, you know, I was at basketball practice. I came down to see the guys. I was still injured. And guy named Ed Kerno was playing basketball with us. He was in the session, and we started talking, and he was like, you're getting into music and stuff. He's like, why don't you call over my house? I've got turntables. And I was like, you know, holy shit, man, someone who actually has turntables. And the first time I put records together was in Ed's house. And we talk in 1996, man. You know, it's going way, way back, right? We were up in his bedroom in his parents' house. And like between us, we had like 25 records.
Yeah.
And we would just mix to death, you know, every, you know, A side, B side, back and forth, in and out, trying to figure out how you could fine tune, how you could get the beats together and stuff. And that was a really interesting time. And then Ed was actually playing kids parties, which I found hilarious, but he had the whole rig. And funnily enough, when I saw him on the kitchen lockdown, it reminded me of the days he was doing the kids party.
He's still got the same rig, probably.
with his mobile disc guy. He was waiting 20 years to bring it back out again. But he used to mix into a telephone, you know, like the old.
I remember that, yeah.
Telephone with a stretchy cord.
Yeah.
And then I came with him to these parties and stuff, and he was playing like fucking house, man, for the 8-year-old kids and stuff.
Oh, was he?
It was hilarious. It was hilarious, you know. So he was there at the beginning, and then one of the older guys I played basketball with, a guy named Andy Clark, who at the time was a resident DJ in Neptunes in Mumble.
I remember, yeah.
And he was a cool guy, and he was also really good mates with Lindsay Martin.
Yeah.
And then he invited us down. His parents owned the Coast House in Mumbles, next door to the George, right?
Right.
And, he had his deck set up in the living room down there, and he invited me down, and he was like, Edge, come down and play in my living room for a couple of hours, and then we go to Neptunes, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, we go down there, play in his living room, and he was really fucking good, right? I can tell you now, even to this day, like technically, one of the best damn DJs I ever saw, and I was like, holy fucking shit, I'm not going anywhere near those turntables, right? Like, he's so good. He's so good. And Andy was also, like I mentioned, he was playing basketball. He was into hip hop and rap. And, you know, he basically took the hip hop rap approach to DJing and did it with house and garage, right?
Wow.
And he could do it. Like, he could scratch, he could, like, you know, double up, he could use all the buttons and the faders. And I was like, fuck, he's a genius, man, you know? And we went down to Neptunes, and it was the first time I saw him play, and he ripped for 15 minutes, like 2 records, in and out, back and front. And I was like, it was like Grandmaster Flash for me, you know? I was like, shit, now that's the level for me, right? And Lindsay was quite similar at Strictly, you know, very technical.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was definitely about the music, first of all, and then the appreciation for like the craft of DJing as well. You know, which I think nowadays is not as common. You know, the craft has moved away a little bit because of all digital tools, you know, and the way that it's easier to get into DJing nowadays, I think, for some reasons. But they were amazing memories, you know, those early days back in the late 90s. They were great days.
So what was your first gig?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, I eventually bought turntables early 97, right? I'd saved up, and I bought a pair of belt drive, you know.
Everybody did.
Yeah,
Everybody
right?
starts on belt drive.
Piece of shit crap. You couldn't really mix on them, to be fair.
Yeah.
Right? But, you know, I locked myself in my room, I learned to play those things like an instrument. You know, I was like, I'm not leaving this bedroom until I can do, you know, like a little bit like what Andy's got, his style, a little bit like, you know, Lindsay, a little bit like, and some of the DJs that I started to get into then. Eric Murillo had launched Subliminal that year, and I felt like I found my sound. You know, when I started to hear a bit more this very American house coming through, right? I've been buying a lot, Strictly Rhythm, Nervous, you know, a lot of the American labels, and I raided my dad's disco collection, which I found in the attic.
Right.
You know, when Subliminal came along, and Murillo started putting out a lot of good tunes, I found my sound. Now, I was very, in all honesty, I was in awe. I was so much in awe of Andy and Lindsay that I was like, I'm not worthy enough to play. I'm not worthy to play out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And actually, I loved music so much, I didn't want to play out. I just wanted to master the craft at home, right, in the bedroom.
And then release yourself.
Yeah, but then two of the boys, you know, at college were like, man, when are we going to hear you play? Like, you know, no good fucking being in your bedroom all the fucking time. And so I did a mixtape. I did a two-sided mixtape. And I remember I designed the cover on MS Paint in the college library. I decided my name was going to be Paul Edge. You know, it was a big decision. Like, you know, what was my DJ name going to be? And, you know, and I did some artwork, and I picked out, you know, the best tracks that I had in my collection, and I recorded that down, and I did about 20 copies, and I gave them out. And I remember I was sweating, man. I was like, what if nobody likes my sound? What if they think I'm shit? Like, you know, I'm going to be crushed. And then a couple of like hours later, I saw people in the college. They were listening to them on the Walkmans, and they were like, fuck, man, this is banging. You know, this is really good shit. When are we going to see you play out? So by this time, Monkey on, you know, Cafe Monkey had started picking up. And, you know, I was asked to come to a gig and play. You know, they were like, come along, man. It's just be a laugh. Like, play 40 minutes, an hour. You know, bring some of your best records.
Yeah.
And just fucking, nobody gives a shit if you can't mix. Just get out there. And I remember, man, for a week, I was shitting myself. I was like, it was like the biggest moment of my whole life, you know. And I got down there, I got to Monkey, and the place was absolutely rammed. I went in the bathroom and I threw up. I literally, I remember I was so nervous, I threw up.
Yeah.
And Andy Clark grabbed me and he's like, get out there and mix, you fucking pussy, right? And I got in the booth behind the decks, and they were 3 decks, 3 Technics 1210s, right?
Yeah.
And I'd never played on these things before. And I remember, I put my first record down, and it was a bit like the first time you get on a horse. It was like, what the fuck, man, compared to my test drives back home. These things were, what the fuck? Like, you know, so much talk. And I couldn't hear shit. I had my headphone, like, you know, locked in, and I was trying to queue up, right? And I was like, I can't hear nothing, you know, sweaty palms and stuff, and totally dropped the first mix. No, but I looked up, and like nobody cared, right? Because they were all so shit-faced on ketamine that like nobody fucking noticed. And I was like, whack the volume up. All right, that one's so bad. First one's out of the way. Let's get on with it.
Yeah.
And I ended up playing an hour and got gradually better through the evening. So, you know, that was my first gig, Monkey, in '97.
Yeah.
Hell of an experience. And I hated every minute of it. But I got back home, and I didn't sleep that night. I was wired, man. You know, I hadn't discovered drugs yet. You know, but I was wired, and I realized I didn't need drugs. And that was I think that was in the February or March of '97, if I'm not mistaken. And then amazing thing happened. You know, I'd become really close with a few of the guys, and Andy told me that he was going out to Ibiza for the summer. And he was like, man, you should come out, you should do something out there. And he got a job working for Ministry of Sound, doing promotions, right?
Right.
And, he was on a mission, very good DJ, taking his records with him to Ibiza, 97. So this was like, Ibiza was just coming on the radar for a lot of people. And, there was the Ibiza Uncovered documentary, which got aired in the UK. And that was the same year. So it hadn't become like overrun yet with headers. It was still it was at the time where it wasn't underground anymore, but it was just getting a bit more commercial, but still really, really fucking cool. And he was like, man, come out. And I was engaged, man. I mentioned to be married that year, right? In the September, I had the wedding booked and everything. And somehow, by this time, by the way, Greg, basketball, I never went back. Basketball, I never went back, man. I literally like lost touch with basketball.
All or nothing, you, aren't you?
Yeah. And then I was so engrossed in this, experience. So I went out to Ibiza for a holiday, ended up staying 3 weeks, but basically shadowed the boys who I knew who were living out there, Andy, one of them, and a few of the other boys who he was living with. And we were going around on a moped, driving around to gigs and stuff. And, he was selling tickets for the clubs, drugs, anything and everything, fruit. And then we would drive into like, Bar M, which was Manumission's pre-bar in San Antonio. And then he was like, I got an hour gig here. And then in 40 minutes after, we're going to go over to Cafe Savannah and play. And I was driving the moped and he was on the back with the record box down by our feet,
Yeah.
And it was amazing, man. And, when I came back after those 3 weeks, I'd done so much. I went to the opening night of Pasha, which was July 4th. It was Independence Day, July 4th. And the lineup was Eric Murillo, who was the resident, they just announced his new residency. Subliminal was like the #1 label on the planet.
Yeah.
They'd only had like 3 or 4 releases by that time, but they were already considered like the best label. There was Murillo, Deep Dish, and DJ Sneak, right?
Right.
And his crew, which was like Junior Sanchez, fucking, all those guys. And, if I told you that, like, I was in Pasha, I was there for the music, but you couldn't help notice what was going on, and there was Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee there. There was Noel Gallagher there. There was like, Howard Marks was there. Puff Daddy was there, not that night, but he was there in the summer later on, but hanging out, and it was as close to like, my dad told me about Studio 54, right? And he was a lucky guy because he got to go to Studio 54. And it was as close as like I felt I would ever get to being at Studio 54, with this like amazing, like no smartphones, no bullshit, nobody cared what clothes you had on. I think I was in there wearing like flip flops and a pair of shorts, right, and a wig, and Murillo was playing a 6-hour set to start the night, and I remember he opened with Jocelyn Brown, Ain't No Mountain High Enough, but his own re-edit of it. And there was grown men fucking crying on the dance floor, in ecstasy, and this had a huge impression on me, huge impression. And when I came back to Swansea after that 3 weeks, I remember thinking like, man, I gotta figure out a way that I can be a DJ, and make it my life somehow.
So there's a reason why I asked if you're still DJing. You're gonna have to come on the stream with us one weekend.
Yeah, I would love to, man. I would love to.
When you
I
free?
would love to. I mean, I'm retired, but like I said, I'm always up for it, you know?
You're retired until the phone goes.
Yeah, you got it.
You free this weekend?
We'd need to plan it. We need to plan it. So this weekend, no, but let's see for maybe the weekend after.
Cool, okay. Let's see if I can get you on. I will get you on. It's just Saturday.
Yeah. Let's see, man. Let's see.
Sorted. Thank you very much. Just written down in my list. So you'll be live next Saturday. So you went into great detail then about obviously your first experiences and with Ibiza, Monkey, etc. So this is quite, even though people from around the world do listen to these streams, it is quite Swansea central as well. So what places have you played in Swansea?
Well, I think what happened that period I talked about, 97, 90, and specifically 98. In 98, I went back out and tried to get some gigs, right?
Yeah.
It didn't really work out, mostly because it was just saturated, man. There was so many DJs out there. I mean, you had DJs who were established producers.
Yeah.
They were climbing over each other to get an hour at, Cafe Mambo, and they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I had a breakup with the girl I was engaged to. And we were a month away from the wedding. That was 98. And, I just came back from Ibiza the second time. I went 97 first time, 98 second time. And then this really hit me big time, right? And then all of a sudden, I realized I didn't have my basketball anymore. And then I just broke up with a girl I've been engaged to, and we've been together for about 3 years.
Yeah.
And she basically disappeared. And she might watch this. We recovered and became friends afterwards, after a long period of absence, let's say. But and she got a great life. She's with the guy that she met after we broke up, and they have a beautiful family.
Yeah.
But when that happened, I was 20 years old, still young. I was a bit lost. I was like, fuck, man, this sucks. And then I discovered I'd messed around a little bit with recreational drugs, but then I discovered the medicinal side of it. How drugs sometimes can be a necessary part of your life, not just recreational. And because of that breakup, I definitely went into a zone where the only thing that existed was music and drugs.
Okay.
And, if there was drugs there, I would take them. Like, doesn't matter what they were, who's paying, I'm paying, you're paying, whatever, I'll do it, right? And I found that it was a very good escape, right? And funnily enough, I put DJing to the side, right? I couldn't concentrate anymore. I couldn't focus on anything. I left college. I didn't finish the year of college that I was in that year. I dropped out. So I got a job that basically got me through the week, right? And I was working in I was working at McDonald's, man.
Right.
I was the only thing I could do that didn't require a lot of brain power. So I got a job in McDonald's. I was doing the French fries and the cheeseburgers, right? And I had a chalkboard in my parents' kitchen, right?
Yeah.
Where I would count the fucking days, because I couldn't go out every week because drugs were expensive. Going to escape was expensive. So I used to have a chalkboard where I would literally count down the days till I could go out.
Yeah.
And get off my face and just get lost in, the best music that I could possibly have. And then, to be honest, that lasted for 4 years.
Right.
From 98 to 2002. And in 2002, for no reason that I can remember, a few things connected at the right time, right place.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, maybe, I don't know, I don't believe in all things connected, but there was something looking after me at that moment. And I was looking at getting a proper job, let's say, and sorting myself out a little bit. I'd had a very bad time with girls since the breakup, over 4 years. Lost my way a little bit. And then I got lucky because I got a job that was paying a salary at NTL back in the day, which is Virgin now. Yeah. And I remember I wanted to get that job so much, I didn't go out for a month, and I studied really hard on what they were going to ask in the interview, because I had a mate who was working there. Yeah. And he told me, this is not going to be easy. You need to do this, need to do that. And I got in, and I was so landed that I got this. I went out and partied. I was like, okay, let's go. So I went out, and then Indigo was the place to be then, 2002. And I go out. It was a Thursday night. I walked into Indigo, and John Stefanik, Smiley, Dave Holness, and Matt Hardin were playing that Thursday night in Indigo, and the place was bouncing. And I hadn't been out for a while. I hadn't been to Indigo for a long time. And I walked in, and Matt and I knew each other because I run a night during that dark period. I did run a night in Spoofers, which was next to the old YMCA, and that had some success. We used to do a Sunday night called Religion, and that had a good following. We did it for less than a year, and we got closed down because we had 3 weeks in a row where we had like 4 ambulances coming to pick people up from overdose on fuck, what was the drug called back then? Jub.
Oh fuck yeah.
Right, and we had 3 ambulances. And then the boss came and he was like, guys, no ambulances this week. Bang, we had more ambulances than the week before, and they took the license away, and we lost it. And like literally, we turn up to the gig. Matt loved DJing there so much, right? He'll kill me for telling you this. There was a night that he couldn't get his car to work, and I called him, and he had to bring a mixer for us, if I remember well, right? And I was like, hurry up, how are you going to get down there? And he pushed the mixer in a shopping trolley all the way from Llangefellach to the Spoofers on the Kingsway in the fucking rain. He had the mixer wrapped up in a black bag. I mean, I don't know about you, but that was like
dedication.
That's dedication. So Matt and I were good mates, and I hadn't seen him for a long time. And he was there playing in Indigo. And, he was like, man, it's good to see you. What's happening? I was like, oh, I just got good news. I got a new job and I'm sorting myself out. And then he was like, dude, have you heard about the new place opening on Wine Street? And I was like, no, I don't know. He was like, yeah, there's a place. It's called Revolution. Yeah. He's like, come and check it out. And we finished the gig. We'd had a few vodka Red Bulls, and we walked over to Wine Street, and Revolution was covered up with construction covers, but the door was open, and Matt was like, fuck it, let's go in and have a look, right? And we walked into Revolution, and the builders were all there. Nobody even noticed us, right? And we had I was carrying one of his record bags, and he had the other one, and we walked in, and we walked straight out the back, and we were like, man, this is a fucking cool bar, Yeah. And there was 2 guys sitting down on a sofa, one named Bruno, one named Mike, and they looked at us both, and they were like, can we help you guys? And we were like, yeah, don't mind us. We're just checking the place out. And Mike stood up, Big Mike, and he was like, I'm the manager. And I was like, oh, sorry, we're just checking it out. And he was like, oh, are you DJs? And Matt and I looked at each other, and we were like, yeah, we're DJs. And he's like, are you any good? Yeah, we're fucking great. And he was like, I need a DJ for the opening night next Friday. And he gets on the walkie-talkie, right? And he asks the guys to turn the sound system on, right? And he was like, come on over. And the booth was there. Dude, the decks had just been put in that day, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, you got
Right.
15 minutes, right? And we sat, and Matt was looking at me. He's like, fucking hell, don't fuck it up, right? And I hadn't played in a while. And I was like, look, let's just mix through a couple of these, and do a good job, and we're golden. And man, we did a 15-minute that went into 30-minute audition.
Yeah.
And he came over, shook our hands, and he said, see you next Friday, 8 o'clock. Don't be late, right? And that was, like I said, that was the opening of Revolution. And Matt and I, we basically went through a week of preparation for that set. It was well promoted. There was going to be a big crowd.
Yeah.
And, we were like, dude, this could be really cool if we managed to play here regularly. We got down there. The sound system was great. It was a huge queue outside. I was buzzing to just walk in there and be the first DJ. And, we played that night from 8 till, they kept the bar open, I think, till 2. We were sweating pints. We were doing 2 records each, back to back. And we had a ball. And we went to a after party. Was it Punana?
Yeah, it was.
Next door. Yeah. And we went in there. Chris Vitari was DJing in there.
Yeah.
And, we were buzzing. And Bruno and Mike bought us a bottle of champagne. And they were like, how do you feel about being, regular DJs? And he said, look, I got loads of DJs who want to play here. I got a box of mixtapes in my office from DJs, but, I'll give you a month. And he said, I give you 4 Saturdays. So come back tomorrow, and then we play 4 more Saturdays, and then, then we see how it goes, And we played there for 3.5 years. And we missed one Saturday night. And even when we took vacation, we took holidays, we did it like we went on the Sunday and came back on the Friday, because we were sure the minute another DJ gets in there, Mike would fuck us, right? So we were like, we got a show like every week. But we played there 3.5 years. And the only reason it ended was I moved to London.
Right.
I moved to London in 2005. Mm-hmm. And Matt, we played every Saturday together, right? And when I moved to London, this is for another show, I think, Greg, another entire interview. But he decided to take a break because he never played on his own. It was, we were breaking up a little bit, and I understood it. We talked about it for months. Yeah. And he took a break, and he never really stuck at it like when we were together. But man, those days were incredible. We did 3.5 years in Revolution, really built a brand, down there. Yeah. A branded sound, the 2 of us. We were feeding all the other, like the Escape crowd. Pitcher and Piano had their thing going on. Yeah. Indigo had their thing going on, and we had our thing going on. And man, I wish it never ended, but when it did, it was a good time as well. Yeah. We won awards. There was a crazy, I remember a crazy experience. There was a forum. You remember Off Its Face forums?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, Neil Roberts was running those things, and they were mental, man. I used to be addicted. I'd be on there all day. I had like 10 accounts, and I was arguing with everybody under my aliases and talking bullshit. I'd be ripping Evo to pieces and, telling him he was shit, and then fighting with Ed Kerno and, everyone, Big Al's on there. And, everyone was hating on Revolution all the time. And, the Office Fate, they had some awards ceremony in Cardiff. And I was really chuffed because the first year they did it, one of the best categories was Best Pre-Bar in Wales. And, there was Pitcher in there. There was Indigo in there. I think it was Ice Bar in there. and then there was all the bars in Cardiff, like Moloko.
Mm-hmm.
And we went up there, and it was all the forum members voting, right?
Yeah.
And we went up there, and man, we won. Like Revolution won, and I remember going up on stage and getting the trophy and stuff, and I thought like, wow, I've made it, I've arrived, you know. This is great. And yeah, man, loads of good memories. But London was definitely a moment when I decided I needed to do something else, and that was both the career and DJing a bit. I wanted to see what London had to offer. You know, is there something there that, you know, I could take advantage of? You know, can I get a residency there? Can I play in the big clubs?
Yeah.
You know, and that. So London was a great experience as well.
Okay. So where else have you played in Swansea? So obviously you talked about Monkey, where it started. You had a good thing in Revolution for the time you were there.
We played.
Were you and Matt a double team at that point? Everywhere?
We were. Yeah, we were. We never really played alone.
Okay.
We went up to, I remember Crowbar, we played a couple of times. But Mike and Bruno had us on a contract as well. So that was interesting because we couldn't really play anywhere.
Yeah.
And that was interesting as well. I realized, probably looking back, that was not our best move either, because like I remember we went up to Clethley and played not Tom Pepper's.
Storm, is it? Next door.
I can't remember now, but it
the
was
Moonraker, is it? Or
yeah, it could have been, man. And it was a really good. And we came back, and I remember getting his shit for it. Like, he was like, if you do that again, I'm gonna fire you. You know, you were our DJs. It was a bit territorial, you know.
That's how it was.
Maybe he was winding me up, but I took it really seriously, you know.
That's how it was, Edge. Everybody was in was in a contract of some form at that point. If it wasn't verbal, it was written.
Yeah.
And so we were all in contracts. So we were all exclusive to the places we were playing at that time.
Yeah.
It was very, very territorial.
And then, man, there was gigs like, you know, Escape asked us to do a Sunday night, actually.
Yeah.
Danny Slade was trying to get Escape to get a Sunday night going.
Right.
And I remember talking to him about it for a while. And I was like, I don't think people are going to come Saturday and Sunday, right, to the same club. Yeah. And what makes Escape special, you know, is that it's only open on Saturday night. And we were right, because we did it. He wanted to do a classics night, you know, and this was early 2000s. So classics were like, you know, 80s and 90s.
Yeah, yeah.
And we came down. He asked us to kick it off. I was trying to think who else was playing down there. I think he played as well, Danny Slade. You know, and there was like 10 people there. You know, the first night, it was nobody there. And I think we only did it for like 6 weeks. We got paid, you know, okay.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really working out. So I played in Escape. Mike was not keen on us playing in Escape on a Saturday. Mm-hmm. Clifford was always kind of like, when are you going to come and play here? And, you know, Escape was always a bit like, again, like hallowed ground for me. You know, I never felt like that was a place I would play.
Yeah.
And looking back, I'm glad I didn't play there, because it stayed like a place where my heroes played, you know, right. and it's a bit mythical, you know, still, but yeah, man. But no, Swansea's music scene was tremendous. I played up in Cardiff. I played at L'America for Craig Bartlett.
Yeah.
A couple of times. They had a Rising Stars gig.
Yeah.
That they did every now and again. And I went up there, played a night where Joey Negro was there. That was pretty cool. And then there was another bar, the Lounge, I think it was, the Lounge, down underground place.
Yeah,
and
right.
I played there. Man, lots of gigs, you know, lots of gigs. But The Palace on High Street.
Yeah,
I
my
love
home.
that place, man. We should bring the Palace back, man.
It's just been announced that somebody's bought it and they turn it into flats or
That's terrible.
office spaces.
That's terrible news.
Palace is my home. That's where I played for years. I played
I
garage.
remember, man. I remember. That was such a fucking great club.
Loved it.
Fucking great club. I remember going there, man. I got actually all the worst states I ever got in was in the Palace. It was not in the Escape.
Yeah.
Like somehow the crowd there, the vibe there was like proper mosh pit. You know?
Yeah.
And I got in the worst. I remember coming back from a night out at the Palace. My parents were away on holiday, right? And I organized the night back at my place, and after party back at my place. And I got back in a taxi. I gave the key to Daniel Lewis, Mellon, right?
Mellon.
I gave the key to him. What a fucking mistake that was. I
Lost
came back, and I remember Leighton Brookfield was in my kitchen on the floor snorting vodka off a spoon, man. Like, I've got all these really like random images of that night, and I remember like, holy shit, I got to get these people out of here, you know. And but that was the night at the Palace. Oh man, I remember drinking like pill wine and fucking all sorts of shit, you know, smoking God knows what, and
yeah,
that was that. There were some good memories, but rough after parties as well, you know.
So, what's the best gig you played in? Thank you.
Yeah, best gig. Matt eventually moved to London as well.
Right.
And when he came back and settled, we started playing again a lot, and we'd made some good connections. We played a gig at Herbal in Shoreditch.
Shoreditch, I played there.
Yeah, we played at Herbal, and Matt would probably say that was the best gig we ever played.
It wasn't a big place, is it? Shoreditch. It was Herbal in Shoreditch. Wasn't a big venue, is it?
No, that's exactly what I was about to say.
Yeah.
It was an intimate gig, but it was amazing. And the owner was there the night we were playing, and he came over and he was like, guys, you know, I had Bobby and Steve in here last week, and you guys are way fucking better than they were. And I remember saying to him, well, you can pay us a bit more then. And, you know, because we weren't earning Bobby and Steve wages.
Yeah.
I have very, very good memories about that night. Just the crowd, you know, going right off. But we played my standout, like the memory, you know, like I wish I could do that again, was Turnmills.
Right.
You know, we got invited to play because of Herbal.
Yeah.
You know, some word got around that these two Swansea boys, like, you know, ripped up Herbal and they should be playing big gigs. And, you know, we got arranged then to play at Turnmills. And Turnmills was a club, like, I used to go up on a train from Swansea to go to Turnmills. So to go to Turnmills and play was like, you know, but then I was locked in. I was like, man, we are going and we are on our way, you know. And we played the same night as the main headline gig was Heller and Farley. Yeah. And we were playing the Little Room, what they call the Little Room, which was about the size of, it was probably the same size as the Room 1 of Escape. But we packed out so much that room. Yeah. Like, you know, it was my equivalent of Wembley Stadium. You know, I was like, I never seen so many fucking people in one place whilst I'm on the turntables. And we had more people in our room than Heller and Farley had in the main room. Class. And that was really fucking special. And I remember Matt and I, we didn't do any drugs that night, and we were so focused. The closest we ever got to being like Daft Punk, you know, like totally locked in and programmed that night, like from start to finish. Yeah. And the funny thing was, that was 2007, right? End of the year, and we got, you know, so many phone calls after that gig. We played in Brixton. We played in Camden. We played, you know, outdoor festivals and stuff. You know, there was underground gigs going on in the.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And then in the January of 2008, we were literally at a point that had taken probably, you know, all the years we were together.
Yeah.
And we just started getting offers, and we were. And then I made a decision to move to Switzerland because I had other plans, you know. And then my body had taken a beating, man. You know, those years in London. You know, I was getting up some nights, Greg. I was getting up at 2 a.m. to go and play a gig at 3.
Yeah.
Finishing at 5, getting back home at 5:30, and waking up at 7:30 to go to work. And
Right.
I was taking, like, you know, whatever drug I could find so that my boss wouldn't think like I was on drugs, but I was on drugs to make him think I wasn't on drugs, you know, which was amazing. You know, I couldn't concentrate on work anymore. I wanted to be a professional DJ so bad, you know, that I was putting everything at risk again.
Yeah.
So I decided that I would take a year out and take a year out, and I moved, you know, overseas, somewhere safe. And that's when I retired. And that's been 12 years.
And then you moved to Switzerland.
12 years. And I've been out here for 12 years.
Awesome. Awesome. So what's the most random gig you've done?
Random. Random gig. There must be a few.
It's got to be one that stands out.
There is one, and Matt might remember this better than I will. But for some reason, we got on a train to Cardiff for a gig at very short notice. Got to this venue. The guy who was supposed to meet us was not there. And the manager put us on the decks. Didn't have any money to pay us. We played 6 records. There was nobody there. And then Matt went over to the guy and said, if you don't pay us in the next 5 minutes, we're just going to take our records and leave, right? And he didn't come over. He didn't pay us. There was no punters in there, right? I can't remember the name of this place, man. And he's like, Edge. And he was really pissed. And he's like, Edge, if he doesn't pay us by the time that next record finishes, we just take our shit, we get out of here, right?
Yeah.
And we finished the record. Nobody came to pay us. There was no punters. We grabbed the record, turned it off, grabbed the records, walked out, right?
Mm.
And we were like Billy Big Nuts walking down the high street going, fuck this, Cardiff, fucking wankers and all that, right? And we didn't really realize what time was. And we got to the train station and we'd missed the train back to Swansea, the last train back. Right?
Yeah.
And Matt was like, oh, what are we going to do kind of thing, right? And by the way, it was fucking hammering down with rain, right? And we were like 2 idiots walking with really heavy record bags. And then he's like, oh, let's just get a fucking cab, right? And I was like, a cab back to Swansea? Mate, we didn't get paid, right? And he's like, yeah, but you got some money on you. Like, Matt would always think I had the money, right? Money. And I'm like, no, honestly now, Matt, I haven't got any money on me. And I didn't have my bank card, right? So we standing in Cardiff fucking train station. Now we're rain. He got no money. I got no money. We didn't get paid for this gig. And he's like, fuck it. I think I've got like 40 quid on my credit card. And we go to the Holiday Inn Express, right? Or some shit, which is miles away. And we talk on the phone. I missed a bit. We talk on the phone to the receptionist. And we were like, look, we're 2 guys stuck. Can we stay in a shittiest hotel room you've got for 40 quid? Right? And the girl was like, you better fucking hurry up because I'm leaving in 20 minutes, right? And I was like, how far is it? And she was like, you know, it's a mile. So we were running in the rain with 2 fucking record bags on our shoulders, belting it down to the Holiday Inn Express to get in a hotel room for 40 quid. And we made it, man. She was just getting out the door. And she was like, get in here, you fucking headers. And we ended up staying. And what, I'll never forget that one. That was definitely a random as fuck night.
It's definitely random. Does that incorporate the worst gig you've ever done as well, or have you got another one which you could perhaps pull out the bag?
Worst gig? Oh. No, you know what? I'm gonna tell you about the most surprising gig. Right?
Surprising is one thing.
To be honest, I didn't have that many bad ones. I think, you know, because we spent the years in Revolution, which was like pretty much guaranteed.
Yeah.
Every time, like, good night.
Yeah.
We were a bit spoiled, you know. The most surprising, we got invited to do a birthday party in my stake, right? in a bar, in a pub, right?
Yeah.
And the guy, I forget his name, but he was a guy that loved us in Revolution. He would come every fucking Saturday, and he was like, guys, it's my 25th birthday. Will you come up to my stag and DJ my birthday? And he offered us like 400 quid to come up. And it was on a Friday night. And he even paid for a cab for us, right? So we got a cab from Winchwen all the way up to my stag, right? We felt like, I was like, man, I'm
fucking celebrity.
I'm hitting the big time, you know? And we get to this pub in the middle of my stag, right? And there's hundreds of people there. I mean, like you've had Roger Sanchez, Greg.
Yeah.
I felt like Roger Sanchez. There was hundreds of people there. And this pub was absolutely bouncing, right? And we walked in, and he was a DJ. So he'd been playing his own warm-up gig, his own birthday party. Average age as well was quite high. There was punters in there my mother's age, absolutely off their chops, dancing on tables. And when we walked in the room, like, everyone was high-fiving us and hugging us, like, and I was like, holy shit, I didn't realize I had so many fans in my stag, you know?
It's because you're from Swansea. I remember when we went from Swansea, when we were playing in the Skip and in Bar 7, and we went up to Talbot. It was like, as you said, Roger Sanchez turned up at Talbot. We'd have people waiting for us. The Kai would drive because he doesn't drink. People would come and open the doors for us to take us in. Can I carry bags? But it's just fucking, it's a different world, isn't it? It's a different world.
Amazing, mate. And I tell you what, like, hanging off the roof in there.
Yeah.
You know, like every track we played got a better reaction than the last one, you know?
Yeah.
I think we ended up playing like 3-4 hours. We were exhausted. Like, the energy in the room, they were so hot in there. And like, they were giving us drinks, and man, it was amazing, you know. So I thought about that one because definitely the most surprising. And we never went back to my stag. Probably should have, you know. I should probably, when I decide to come back to Wales one day, if that ever happens, I'm going to open a pub in my stag and just have techno nights on a Friday night, man, for fun, you know.
That's brilliant. So,
could be worse.
This one has always been a tough one. No, I'll go with a different question first because this one's a tough one as well. What's your top 5 tracks?
Top 5 tracks. Yeah, that is a tough one because I've thought about it a lot, and we've had chats about it with different, you know, mates. If I had to choose 5 really, like, just great records, I'd say, not because they sound the best or because you know, they get a dance floor going no matter what. But
Yeah.
I would say the 5 tracks that mean the most to me, right? I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, you know, this Ministry of Sound Dance Nation 2 CD.
Yeah.
And that first disc with Pete Tong, you know, that Pete Tong put together, the very first record is very important to me, and is one that, like, if you play it in a club, you know, there's a lot of emotion with it.
Yeah.
And that was Missing by Everything But the Girl,
Yeah.
Todd Terry remix.
Yeah.
And, you know, is a timeless record. You can still play that today.
I still
You know,
play it
and
today.
there's a lot of records that can play across decades, but this one for me is the most important record because it was the record that I remember hearing and thinking, you know, I found my music. I found my place, you know, in the music.
Yeah.
So that one's really important. And funnily enough, the producer, Ben Watt, there was the vocalist, Tracy Thorn, and Ben Watt was the producer. He went on to be a phenomenal DJ, and he set up his own record label called Buzzin' Fly, which later became one of my absolute favorite labels. I mean, even to this day, absolutely incredible label. He was one half of Lazy Dog with Jay Hanna, and they were running nights on a Sunday, the Lazy Dog nights. And then he started, when Buzzin' Fly took off, he started running a Buzzin' Fly night in a club called Neighborhood in Kensington. And we went to those nights a lot.
Yeah.
And he was DJing, and I got to know him through his music as a DJ.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, I would go every Sunday, and whenever I was there, I would shake his hand, and I would talk to him on the Paul Farris forums back in the day, you know. So somehow it made the full loop. It was a record that got me into it, and Ben Watt became a producer that later on, and we're talking 2000, when I started playing in Revolution, he launched Buzzin' Fly.
Yeah.
You know, and that label was incredibly rich. A lot of different sounds. You had techno on there, you know, you had salsa on there, you know, even indie and house. And I bought every record blind without even listening to it. And I played all those tracks in the years through Revolution. So it makes sense that would be like the #1 records for me in terms of what like is the most important. Another one, #2. I would have to say there's a track on Subliminal, Eric Murillo's label, by Jose Nunez, In My Life.
2.
This was the soundtrack to Pasha for like years, man. You know, this Murillo played it at the opening night in '97 when I was there on July 4th.
Yeah.
And I've never been in a club where you had that much of a reaction, man. When he dropped that, nobody really knew what it was when he played it.
Yeah.
Right? There was this thumping bass line, and then this growing reverb in the background. And then when the vocal kicked in, was a vocalist named Octavia. You know, when that vocal kicked in, I get goosebumps. I'm even talking about it now, right? I
got it myself.
Goosebumps.
Got it myself.
Holy shit. Like, you know, and I remember going to the record shops in San Antonio the day after saying, guys, Murillo, last night, opening night, In My Life. And the guy was like, yeah, it's coming out next week. Subliminal. It was on his own label as well. That's what made it so amazing. And I bought it as soon as I got my hands on it. I bought it. I've got like 4 copies of it because the copies I bought had different versions of it.
Right.
But the original, the Drones vocal mix is is fucking sublime. I mean, that has to be number two. Very powerful record. You know, Murillo released hundreds of tracks on Subliminal.
Yeah.
Not the obvious choice, but because I was there when it was like given birth to on the dance floor in Pasha in '97, you know, and then bought my copy in Ibiza. That was really special record. Number three, gonna do a little thinking. Number three, we got Missing Everything But the Girl, In My Life, Jose Nunez. Number three, so many great classics, so many great tracks. I want to choose something maybe a little bit more old school, because this is old school. After all, the old school for me was, you know, very
early 90s.
Yeah, even mid 90s. And I remember, you know, look, Strictly Rhythm, we had Strictly Groovy was the night on a Friday that I used to go to, you know, and then Strictly Rhythm was a label that I loved a lot.
And me. He
You
used to
know,
release garage as well as house, didn't they? They had lots.
I
You know,
mean,
the
you know,
crossover stuff when it was like 94, 95 sort of stuff. The crossover stuff was just fucking crazy.
And you go through that label. If you go through the back catalogue of that label, and even like some of the stuff that's not well known, just like incredible music, you know. But that's the thing. Even if this was a Strictly Rhythm interview, I would be hard pressed to pick 5 Strictly Rhythm records, but to pick one. You know, we talked about Roger Sanchez a bit. You know, you had the pleasure of having him. He was a big influence on me as a producer and a DJ. But I think I loved Roger as a producer first, because it was like a guy that no matter what, you bought his records and they always worked. You know, it doesn't matter what you were playing, you know, house, techno, garage. Roger Sanchez had such a style, and every release was really original. So you didn't know like it was Roger Sanchez. You know, he didn't have he had a trademark, but he had such a diverse way of putting music together. There's a track by him called Get High on Strictly Rhythm. If you don't know it, go and listen to it. Play it, Greg. It's a fucking great record. It has a brass section on it, you know, with a trumpet. That's just such a groove, and it's such a simple record. It's not a big room sound, but if you play it in a big room, you watch the reaction, right? And you know, when I was playing regularly, you know, in revs, I wasn't so much interested in what was going on in the dance floor. And the way Revolution was built, you had a lot of space for people not to dance, right? So Matt and I used to say to him, look, dude, you've got to get those people who are not dancing, you've got to get them on the dance floor, because the dance floor is guaranteed. You know, you want as many people who are not dancing to be dancing. And the Roger Sanchez Get High track was one of those records that you would play, that I would play, and almost without fail would get the sunbathers into the swimming pool, you know. and that's a track that I love. So that's number 3. Number 4, let me have a think. Trying to find a different angle for another track that's really important. I was a massive, and still am, buyer and ambassador of Sulfuric. You know, Sulfuric, Brian Tappert, Mark Pomeroy. They are coincidentally, I don't know if you know, but Brian Tappert set TrackSource up, you know, which is a big digital platform today where a lot of DJs find music for the first time. Brian and I say Brian and I because Brian and I know each other. I became hooked on sulfuric very early in their activities, right? I love a Rhodes piano, right? A Rhodes piano, and Mark Pomeroy was the musician. So you had Brian Tappert, who was really a producer, and Mark Pomeroy, who was the keyboard player, the Rhodes piano, which gave sulfuric its trademark sound. And they were jazz and groove. So when you had a jazz and groove record, it was Brian Tappert and Mark Pomeroy.
Okay.
And their label was so good that they had sulfuric tracks, which was like the funky side, right?
Yeah.
Sulfuric was the very big room gospel sound. And then they launched Sulfuric Deep, which was like the after 2 o'clock in the morning stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I started buying. And Brian Tappert was very active on the Paul Farris forums. And to give you a bit more background, Paul Farris was the owner of Uptown Records.
Yeah, I used to
He had a
shop there
lot of say. At one point,
in Soho. In Soho,
yes,
wasn't it?
exactly,
Yeah.
in Soho. And he owned 4/4 Distribution. And 4/4 Distribution was basically the bloodline of all the DJs that were playing in all the big clubs.
Yeah.
And Brian Tappert was really active on the Farris forums, but under an alias. And one day I figured it out. And I remember emailing him, sort of saying, you know, is this Brian Tappert? And somehow he's like, yeah. Don't blow my cover. And then I was like, dude, a big fan of yours, you know, just got on with him. And then in 2005, Escape in the Park, Brian Tappert came down to play because
Right.
I single-handedly persuaded the escape management and to bring him. And it was the year after Murillo played, right?
Yeah.
Because they had Murillo in 2004, which was one of the most fucking epic experiences of my whole life. Seeing Murillo in Singleton Park after, you know, seeing him for the first time in '97 in Pasha,
Yeah.
you know, was an incredible experience for me. And then Brian Tappert came the year after, and we got together at Escape in the Park. And it was the first time I met him. And I realized I'm supposed to be giving you my record choice for number 4, but I wanted to give you the story. And then I went to Miami for the first time through my job here. I went in 2011 for the first time. And I wanted to track him down because I knew that's where he lived. So I managed to track him down, you know, and we managed to talk on the phone. We didn't meet. He was very heavily involved in the Winter Music Conference, which happens in Miami.
Yeah.
But somehow we became like pen pals. You know, we stayed in touch. But I met him finally in Miami. I've been there a few times then. I was there last year. And, you know, we stay in touch. But anyway, Sulfuric was just a very, very influential label all through my life. A lot of special memories. But for track number 4, if I had to choose out of the phenomenal records that came out on that label, I would say, if I have to choose, I've got 2 in mind. And it might not, it's an obvious choice, but Donna Allen, He Is the Joy. You know, it's just such a beautiful, it's like opera for me. You know, it's like Beethoven. It's like, you know, there's reference points in music where, you know, it's not always about a track that destroys a dance floor. It's also about music that's been so well arranged and recorded, you know, in a studio with instruments, you know, with strings, with you know, real drums. And, you know, Brian explained how long it took to get that track done.
Yeah.
And the way they worked on the vocals. And, you know, I'm a big fan of the gospel sound of house. And that's almost like the best gospel record ever made as well, that made it into house music. So Donna Allen, He Is the Joy, Sulfuric, Big Escape record, you know,
Yeah.
Burn. If you ever get the chance to interview him, he might even say that was his favorite record of all time. Very important. You know, if a house burns down and I can take just a handful, that's definitely in there. Yeah.
That's one of my. I tried getting Byrne to play for me. Do you think I can get hold of him?
No.
No.
I know only. I mean, I know only a little about his whereabouts, and you know.
I know he's in Newport. I know he's in Newport.
Yeah.
I have got a number for him, which I've texted and I've rang about 4 or 5 different times.
Yeah.
It's always rung. He's never fucking responded.
No. I mean, this guy, you know, even when, you know, and Clifford will tell you way more than I ever could, but even when he was, you know, probably the biggest DJ, right? You had Big Al, and then you had Clifford and Byrne.
Byrne always stuck out for me. He always stuck out for me, Byrne did.
Yeah, I mean, Clifford came along. When he came, you know, Byrne was already established, you know.
Yeah. Clifford just added to it, didn't it? So it took it up.
Those two I mean, Cliff, you know, I wrote an article about Clifford and Byrne, which I shared a few times on Facebook.
That wasn't so long ago, is it?
I reshared it. I wrote it a while ago. I wrote it maybe 10 years ago. You know, maybe you could figure out a way to share it through your channel as well, Greg.
Yeah.
Because I really captured a lot the Escape days, but specifically those two. And, you know, I don't think there's ever been like a duo that did it like they did it. And, you know, I went to see MYNC Project, Deep Dish, you know, and these are all double acts, you know. Matt and I, you know, we were really deeply inspired by all the greats, but you know, we didn't imitate Clifford and Byrne because you just couldn't, you know. There was those two, and then if you were trying to imitate them, you were an idiot because you were never going to be as good as them. So, you know, we were definitely inspired by them, but we tried to get our own sound.
Yeah.
You know, but Byrne, you know, Byrne for me is still the purest DJ I've ever known.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I think one of the reasons I never really fully put my foot on the gas to, like what I've done with my career, I never put the same amount of energy into the DJ. And I think part of it was because I just like playing records, and I missed a lot Revolution when I left, you know, when I got to London, and didn't really have the same community there. You know, Byrne did it the right way. He played in one club every Saturday night, had a small group of friends, never really put himself out there, stayed very private, just no bullshit, you know, love music no matter what. And his musical brain, I think there's not another person that I ever spoke to that had such a depth of knowledge on, he didn't know, he would talk about a track. He didn't only know the name of the track, the producer, the remixers. You know, he knew who did the drums, who did the saxophone, what year it originally came out when it was a disco record.
Yeah.
You know, who signed it, who played the fucking triangle in the background. You know, he knew, and I think a lot of what became the popularity and the growth of music in the scene became the reason he disappeared, you know? And I don't quote me on it, but I think, you know, for him, it might be his worst nightmare to think about coming out of his retirement and playing a gig, because I think, you know, he was never artificial. He was never, you know, about anything other than what he did, which was what, you know, him and Clifford did, was play and escape, and that was it. You know,
he was raw, wasn't he? You had Clifford with his skills, who brought in the scratch and the hip hop kind of stuff,
and another level of almost like he brought the funky house. You know, Byrne was very vocal, as a garage DJ, he was fucking excellent, you know. But Clifford brought this, you know, what the fuck, I'm gonna kill you all, and he moved the pitch up a couple of notches, you know. So the two, when they got together, it was like Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, you know. You always have to have two, Batman and Robin, you know.
What's your fifth best tune?
So I realized I gave 4 really good selections, and I got one chance left to get something in there.
One chance.
And I'm thinking now about all the ones I'm gonna leave out, you know. So I think
you can do some special mentions. You can do 5 special mentions as well quickly. But yeah, what's your fifth best?
Yeah. So as you've already gathered, and if anyone is still watching this, because I've been talking forever, I hope there is still some people watching it. You know, trying to think if there was, like, you know, if we were ever going to do a museum in Swansea, you know, which we should do, you know, as a reference to all, and we've got a copper quarter and a museum down in the fucking marina about Swansea's railway. We should definitely have something about Swansea's music scene, man.
Yeah.
We should do something. Maybe we need to get someone with a bit of cash, like, you know, to come and sponsor us, right? And buy the building before it gets turned into fucking apartments, right? Escape, and we build a museum in there. And then everyone has their 5 records. So I'm trying to think about, like, what I would tell, like, the next generation of DJs, like, you have to know these records. So, and why. So that 5th one is going to be a little bit elusive, but I'll go through the labels in my head. I'm trying to think about, like, big moments on dance floors when I almost jumped into the booth, like, fucking breaking down, going, what the fuck is this? Because it happened a lot.
Yeah. DJs used to cover their records, didn't they? You think
I used to do that.
Oh, did you? You were one of those, were you?
And I would confuse everybody, because what I would do, I had a marker.
Yeah.
I always had a Sharpie, and I used to write on the, like, you know, the white labels.
Yeah.
I used to write on the white label, like, you know, DJ John. And I'd write, you know, a fake track name. And it would be nothing to do. So the kid would go to the fucking record shop on the Monday, going, oh, you know, Edge was playing this record, DJ John. And the guy in the record shop would be like, I never heard of it, mate.
He'd sell another copy of the launch.
So I got a lot of records that actually, I'm like, oh, DJ John, yeah. Because I wrote on it DJ John, but it's not really what it was called.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, man, for that 5th record, I'm going to try and choose something, again, that's, like, you know, got a bit of a meaning to it. For me, maybe something that appeals to a lot of people. There's so many good records, you know, that I'm afraid I'm gonna leave out. But that 5th one, look, if I think about I'm trying to think about the time when I was in London, which was a different generation.
Yeah.
To the time when you know, we were going to Escape, and when we were playing in Revolution, there was some records that came about during the time in London that, like, I wish I'd been around when I was DJing in Revolution.
Yeah.
And going out and Escape, because I was like, oh man, I would have loved to hear Clifford play that in Escape back in the day. I talked about Buzzin' Fly. You know, and I think it would be appropriate if I chose one of the tracks off that label, because tying it up, like, you know, with Everything But the Girl, Missing, and then finishing on a Buzzing Fly, but not produced by Ben Watt. But there's an incredible record on Buzzing Fly. And it's called The Sad Piano by Charles Webster. And I want to tell you that the first time I heard this record, you know, this is what being a real DJ was all about, and especially like in London, my experience was like you went to the clubs to hear the best DJs to harvest the sound that you wanted to buy.
Yeah.
Right? Not the other way around, you know? So I went to, you might remember there was a club called The End, The End. And it was owned by the guy, what was his name, man? The group was called The Shaman. You remember The Shaman?
No.
They were a rave producing Ebenezer Good.
Oh, yeah.
They had some crazy tracks, man. But on the dance scene, they were really well respected. They dropped an album in '91 called Boss Drum. And I remember because that was one of the first dancey sounds I ever had that was not really house, right? And I didn't like it. I remember I got it as a present. I chucked it in the back of the collection. And it was only like 10 years later that I pulled it out going, fuck, this is amazing. Because I was into different shit in the early 90s. But yeah, so the guy from The Shaman had a club called The End. And they used to have a legendary night called DTPM. And it was really popular on the gay scene. But they had all the best fucking DJs. They had all the best music. And I went there. It was actually closing that year. So it was 2006, if I remember well. And they had announced the last series of events that were going to be there before it closed permanently.
Yeah.
It was a time when clubs were just shutting down, man. You know, and Justin Martin, who is a DJ from San Francisco, he was on the Buzz and Fly label. He was playing some fucking really top-notch music. Justin Martin. And he dropped this track around halfway into his set. And I mean, just like, I never heard a sound like that.
Yeah.
It's a piano, right? On a down key with a romping bass line. And it's almost like it can trip you out. Like, even if you're not on drugs, it's really hypnotic. Justin Martin, I said Charles Webster, it's Justin Martin is the producer of the track. There's an edit by Charles Webster, but it's the Justin Martin original on Buzz and Fly. So Justin Martin, the sad piano.
Glad I got my pen with me.
Good man. And Justin Martin was the DJ playing it, and he dropped, and I remember I didn't bother him the whole night, but I remember going up to the DJ booth going, please, man, what is this? And he's like, it's me, it's my own track. And he's like, don't worry, it's coming out, Buzz and Fly, in a few weeks. And this is one of those records that, like, I can listen to that with my eyes closed. And when I finish listening to that, it's a 7-minute track. Like, I'm sweating, you know. It's you know, if you were ever producing records, that would be, like, I'd be finished after that. I'd be like, you can't get better than that.
Well, you seem to have left. So as soon as you get to the pinnacle of the mountain, you seem to shoot off anyway.
Exactly.
So you get out while you're ahead. Right. So, quick fire. Top 5 tunes, special mentions.
Okay. Gusto Disco's Revenge.
Yeah.
On Manifesto. This was one of the, not the first, but one of the first records I bought. I remember Clarky, my mate Andy, playing it at Neptune's. Still sounds amazing when you hear it today. It's been sampled by shitload of people, but the original is still the best.
Yep.
Absolutely timeless. Next one. I told you I played Turnmills when Heller and Farley were playing in the other room.
Yeah.
They produced a timeless record called Ultra Flavor.
Yeah, too.
I think you used to bang that out all the time as well, Greg. You know, this is still
I used to play my garage sets.
Yeah, huge record. Ultra Flavor. There's a ton of remixes. There's only one version for me. slamming. And, you know, the version I've got on AM PM, which is from like 96, I think, the vinyl is so well done. The pressing, you know, it's still on a good sound system. It sounds like I bought it last week.
Yeah.
And the production quality is fantastic, you know, and it's such an unassuming record. It starts when, like, with a bass line that, like, is so stealthy, and there's this little, you know, it sounds like a cowbell.
It teases it.
And, like, everyone's on the dance floor, like, and everyone's got in their mind, like, oh, I know what that is, and then you don't know what it is, and it goes, no.
And it drops in, and you think,
it's amazing. Fuck. I love it. Love it. So that would be 2. Special mention number 3. There's so many great labels that come to mind, and a lot of labels. I think I didn't say anything about Defected, you know, and whatever Defected, man. You know, not a lot of people really know that, or give it credit. But Defected started, you know, in the 90s, right? And it's still there today, like pumping out content. You know, just today, I went for a run today. You know, you open up SoundCloud or Spotify and, you know, they're pumping mixes week in, week out. But, you know, when they first appeared, you know, when Simon Dunmore put Defected out, I remember buying the first 2 releases thinking, now this is a label that's going to be special, you know. Subliminal came when that came in 97. And when Defected came out, I remember I played a house party in Port Tenant. Some friends of mine had moved in together, and they asked me to bring my turntables up. And I had this first 2 releases. You know, the first release was Soul Searcher, Can't Get Enough. You know, tune, and that was the first release, man. You know, so, you know, for me, that's got to be in there because, again, you can play that today, like, and goosebumps, holy shit, you know. So, Can't Get Enough, Soul Searcher, that's got to be in the special mentions for me on Defected.
Okay.
How many more?
What are we on? I think we're on 3 now. So number 4.
Number 4. I'm gonna go with something different, less housey, maybe a little bit more crossover. It's probably like, you know, yes, of course, I have to mention, you know, garage was really important, Greg, and we didn't really talk about garage, but garage was like really, you know, I would go in and probably buy, at the time, late 90s, when I wasn't playing out, I would buy as much garage as I did house, right?
Was that when you were in London?
No, this was late 90s, man, late 90s.
Right.
So, you know, and we had, I mentioned Punana, you know, we had Chris Vitari playing in Escape them days.
He used to play Speed Garage on a Friday, didn't he, with Clifford?
And there was a guy named Teddy Brasco, right? I got loads of flyers from late 90s of Escape, and Teddy was playing garage, you know. And then, you remember the Smoking Beats label?
Yeah. Dreams, is it?
You know, exactly, Dreams, but Dr. Love, you know. So that era was really important. But Roy Davis Jr.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
You know, I mean, look, man, I named my son Gabriel.
Yeah.
I always loved that name. And with my missus, when we were talking about the name, somehow that song, I always loved that name because of that song, you know. So not saying he's named after the record, but somehow that Roy Davis Jr. track is just huge.
It's a perfect finisher, that tune is.
It's a beautiful record, yeah.
If you're playing house or if you're playing garage, doesn't matter. It is the perfect finisher.
Yeah.
It's an emotional tune. Now you talk about emotion, I've got goosebumps. And not often I get out of music anymore, and that is one of them.
No, it's a beautiful record, and you know it belongs in that space, like where a few records are that, you know, you could have done one track if you were a producer, or one track. You know, MJ Cole, you know, when he started producing in the garage space as the pianist that he was, you know, Sincere, when that came out, you know, the non genre days, because I didn't buy like, oh, I'm buying garage and I'm buying house.
Yeah, you bought
music. Great music that sounded fucking awesome, you know. And you know, for a lot of time, you know, I remember people saying, how did you manage to keep your spot at Revolution so long, right? And I remember, like, there was other DJs going down there and, you know, trying to talk to Mike and trying to talk to Bruno. And I got to a point after about 6 months, I just wasn't fucking bothered by that. I could go, you know, it was like you got the hottest missus in town, right? Yeah. And she's going out without you every night of the week. And you're at home like this, not worried that she's going to even look at anybody else, because you knew you were taking care of business, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And to a point, you know, because I built such a good relationship with Mike and Bruno, you know, and they knew Matt and I were just like, you know, connoisseurs of music, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't distinguish between house, garage, funk, you know, whatever you call. I didn't even know the names of some of the genres, you know, new disco and stuff. What the fuck? I don't know. It's just good music, right? And it wasn't like being a snob or, you know, it was just like, man, I want to buy music that I get a feeling for, that I think people will enjoy, and they will listen to in 10 years and say, that's a great record. And somehow those guys, you know, Roy Davis Jr., MJ Cole, you know, New Birth, Tough Jam, you know, man, Matt Jam Lamont, you know, I went up to London to see those guys playing, and, you know, you didn't go like to a garage night. It was like, fuck, man, I'm going to see Tough Jam, you know, and DJ Spoonie, and, you know, like I would buy, the minute I heard a track that I thought was like, oh, that would work, I'd buy it, you know? Yeah. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do a little bit of a speed garage bit, you know, man. But I know it's important because you had to know how to play to a crowd, because if you played in a club in London where, you know, when I went down to Brixton the first time, you know, I remember I went the week before to go to the club to listen to like The Resident, just to know, because I was like, I could get a knife in me if I don't play the right records, you know? So I would go down on the night bus, you know, at like midnight and get in there when it was starting to pick up. And then I'd be like, oh, fuck, I haven't got any of this kind of music. Like, yeah. So either you would go with it, and then that was also an experience, because you learn, like, there's a part of it that's about satisfying the crowd, but then there's also your job to break sounds that, you know, people might not have heard before, or, you know, will you know, respect you for as you're trying to be different to some other people, you know.
So
one
5.
more. We got one more.
One more.
One more. Shit, man. All right. One more. Last special mention. I'll tell you one. There you go. So I mentioned, you know, I went to Ibiza in '97, and funnily enough, I'd heard through people who'd been there, and I'd heard, you know, a lot. I read a lot in magazines and stuff about Cafe Del Mar, right?
Yeah.
Not Cafe Mambo, Cafe Del Mar. Like, Cafe Del Mar then was the one, right? You know, you had a guy named Jose Padilla, who was the man, you know, and Mambo, I didn't even know Mambo, right? Like, never even heard it mentioned. So I get down to Cafe Del Mar, and there's, I can remember very well, something, I can't even remember what I had for lunch today, but I can remember Claudio Coccoluto, Italian DJ, was playing, and the place was full, Cafe Del Mar. But I didn't really like the music. I was like, ah, that's shit. I don't like that vibe. And I was like, anyway, it's full. I'm going to come back in. There's another bar over there. I'm going to come back. I'm going to go for a walk. And I was on my own, right? My then girlfriend who I was with and Andy, who was living out there, they were all sleeping in the apartment. And I went down on my own. And I walked across and I see Mambo. And then I go in and I'm getting closer and I can hear the sound. And I'm like, man, this is much better. Fuck Cafe Del Mar, right? And I walk over to Mambo, and the DJ who was a resident there was called Pete Gooding. And he's a bit of a legend in the scene, even to this day.
Yeah.
You know, Pete was playing, and it was just coming up to sunset. I remember that's why I went down there, because I didn't want to miss my first sunset, and everybody else was fucking sleeping. And I was like, fuck, I'll go on my own. So I get down there, and Pete Gooding, right at the right moment, I get my first drink served. I come out of the front on that place that so many people know so well.
Yeah.
And as the sun is going down, he drops Sweet Harmony by the Beloved, man. And I tell you what, I haven't had many like out-of-body experiences in my life, but fuck me. I sat on the sand on my own with a drink, watching the sun go down, listening to, you know, Let's Come Together Right Now. And I was like, it doesn't get better than that, you know? And it wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't that many people. Like, I went back to Ibiza many, many, many times. Last time I was there, fuck me, you couldn't move down there. Like, you couldn't even see the sunset almost. It was an eclipse of people, right? But in the contrast to, like, you know, 97 when I was there, man, yeah, that was a special tune. And that deserves to be the 5th special mention.
That's hell of a mention. Just going to break off for 1 minute because my bladder's full.
All right, mate.
Give me 1 second.
We come back. We come back, yeah?
We'll come back. I got some more stuff to ask you.
So if you pause, we take a break?
Well, I'll pause. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
All right, mate.
Ciao.
Yeah.
So as you filling up with water, I'm filling up with rum. we can see who's the athlete here and who isn't. I got a few other things to go back into. So, but while we're talking about athletes, you still doing triathlon? Yeah. Still, very much. The only thing this year is obviously because of our friend COVID-19. Yeah. All the events have been cancelled pretty much. No country has been untouched by that. By now, I would have already done quite a few races this year. Is my 8th year in triathlon. So I've been doing it for a while now. Found the sport, you know, over here when I moved to Switzerland, because you got the lake, you got beautiful roads to cycle on, and you know, being outdoors here, that's something I really enjoy. And I found like the sport, it's a bit like boxing probably, Greg. Yeah. The discipline around the training gives you a really good structure in your life. Yeah. And I find like when I'm on periods where I don't train as much, the structure tends to, you know, not just around training, but structure on other things tends to disappear as well, you know? Yeah. So yeah, swimming less those days because I haven't got any races. And I got to be honest, that's not my favorite sport either. I fucking hate swimming. It's a necessary evil. Yeah. But it is very good for the body. And I almost approach swimming like a recovery bit. Love the bike. Cycling like crazy. Yeah. I have 3 bikes, which I really enjoy riding. A bit like golf, you know, a different tool for the different needs, you know. Yeah. My favorite is a
is a time trial bike, which is the chrono bike, you know, the one that's very, very fast, not so good for climbing. So I'm getting out on that those days. Around the lake here is 180K. So I don't do it all the time. It takes about 6 hours to get around it on a good day, but I do portions of it, you know, out and back.
Yeah.
And then on other days I climb in a little bit more in the mountains and stuff. I weigh 90 kilos, so I'm not built to be a climber, but I really enjoy getting up the hills. You know, really a hell of a good workout. The only thing is cycling tends to emancipate your frame. So if you've got ambitions of having a, you know, big set of biceps or big chest, if you want that, you can forget it. Cycling will melt you away.
Triathlon isn't for you at all, is it, in those disciplines, to be fair?
No. So, and it's funny because during COVID, those 3 months, I haven't set foot in a gym, right?
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I think I lost 4 kilos, which is definitely muscle. And even though I don't do heavyweight training, I do more lightweight training, you know, core exercises, you know, keeping things more like injury prevention, keeping the frame
higher reps for your stamina.
Keeping the frame very strong. But man, I realized you lose muscle very fast when you're not using the weight room. So as soon as the gyms are open again here with very interesting rules, you know, but I'm not yet comfortable about going in a gym again. I think, you know, sweating a lot and breathing a lot, you know, if ever there was a risk, I think that would be where I'd find a bit more vulnerability. So for now, I'm still out on the bike on my own, enjoying the fresh air, running. I run today. I'll bike tomorrow morning. But no, I train about six days a week between the 3 disciplines. And then generally when I can get to a weight room, you know, 3 days a week in the weight room as well. But again, it's all my spare time now. That's kind of why I have to be a retired DJ. And you know, being a dad, you know yourself, man. Being a dad, being a career guy, or having, you know, aspirations on anything, and then plus, you know, sports, man. It's a lot to manage. You know?
So we'll go through this very quickly, and I know you don't do things very quickly, any of this interview.
I'll try.
So what is it you're doing in Switzerland?
So I've worked for 12 years at the same company. I didn't come here with a job. I came here with a lot of ambition, and I expected that I'd end up working in a restaurant, you know, waiting tables, because I didn't speak the language here. Where I am, you have 3 major languages in Switzerland. In the north, you have German. In the south east, you have Italian. And then where I am, I'm in the French-speaking part. But I realized when I arrived in Geneva, everyone was speaking English.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, okay, that's not too bad. And then literally 3rd day, I put a CV up, you know, on a hosting website, and just thought, okay, let's see what happens. And then I got a phone call the same day from a guy who, you know, was like, Paul, just the guy we've been looking for. And I remember like, shit, man, I must have told some lies on my CV, you know. And no, I had an interview. They took me up to Lausanne, which is the next big city up the lake, about 30 minutes from Geneva. And they took me for a project that sounded really interesting. It was a 6-month contract, and the company is called Philip Morris International. I didn't really know what they were doing. You know, I was more interested in the project that I was going to do, which at the time was IT. I was working in technology. and I thought the project sounded good. So I went to Philip Morris International, and then I realized when I walked in that they were making Marlboro. You know, they were making cigarettes.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, I can maybe cope with that. Let's see. And then I got the job. They offered me a 6-month contract to work on setting up a team that were providing IT services to the company. And the building, there was about 2,000 people. You know, I understood what they needed. I thought, okay. But the thing that was interesting to me was this company, this cigarette company, was huge, you know, and it was a beautiful building. I had to commute every day on the train from Geneva. I was 30 minutes on a train.
Yeah.
And look, when I got in there, I realized that there was a lot of potential there, you know, for the future maybe. So I thought, if I play my cards right, if I do a good job, you know, if I make the right moves, you know, maybe I could get a bit more than 6 months. So 6 months eventually became a year, and then a year became 2. And then in the 3rd year, they offered me a long-term contract.
Yeah.
But I'd moved a lot. You know, I'd moved from IT, went into operations, went into, you know, somehow ended up with what the function was doing was basically looking after the shareholders of the company. And you're talking about a company that makes like 21 billion, right? Dollars, $21 billion. So the shareholders of a company that makes $21 billion is really important. So
Yeah.
I was doing quite a niche job for these guys, small group in the company, very close to the CEO and CFO. So this is a very high risk zone as well. You know, if you fuck up, you're gone in 30 seconds kind of place. But you know what? I was here, nothing to lose. You know, I'm from Body Mind. I don't give a shit. Just take care of everything, keep my nose clean. And, you know, it worked out, man. I did 3.5 years working with the investor relations team. And then I got my really big break. The company started to invest a lot in basically next generation products that are alternatives to cigarettes, you know, obviously vapor products, heated tobacco products. And I was asked to be part of the team that was, you know, building this business. And, you know, very high potential, very high risk, very high pressure. That was 2015. My son had been born in 2014, so he was already a year old. Crazy time, you know, young dad trying to take on the world. I was traveling a lot. I went to like 30 countries in 2 years, all over the place. You know, San Francisco. In 1 week, I was in San Francisco on Monday and then Tokyo, Japan on Friday. Amazing. You know, what a company. Started to do some really cool shit and found out that actually I was not too bad at marketing and communications, you know, and I was in either the right place at the right time or wrong place at the wrong time sometimes. And then, you know, made some good moves. Did 2.5 years on a really good project that basically saw this product launch in 20 countries. And in Japan, for example, we helped the market go from launch to 13% total market share in a year. And just to put that into dollars, that's like $1 billion of net revenue a year in 1 year, you know, from a product brand new. So obviously I had some big success there. And then the company started investing in 2018 in digital. And not a lot of people really knew what that meant. But I was, you know, one of the guys who understood what was trying to be done. Again, made some good moves. They appointed a guy, chief digital officer. We knew each other. We sort of found each other, and he asked me to lead a team under him, and that's what I've been doing for the last 2.5 years. So today I'm managing a team globally who are running communications and digital and events worldwide. So this is a lot of fun. You know, like I said, 12 years, I've only ever worked in one building in Lausanne, but I've traveled a lot, done a lot of cool stuff. Never forgot my roots, you know, still grateful every single day. Don't take it for granted. It can be gone tomorrow, you know, and then I can go and open up a chip shop, you know, somewhere in Winchwen and go back home. I don't know. We'll see, man. We'll see. You know, futures, the last few months, man, the world changed a lot, you know, and I think everybody, whatever you were doing or whatever you do today, I think these last few months, they gave everybody a cold shower, you know, for the future. I'm talking about people I know who were made, you know, for the future.
Yeah.
Who got now bankrupt, you know, in 3 months, you know. So this is an interesting time, you know, for everyone. And I think I don't know what my future looks like. You know, 3 months ago, I had a pretty clear view on what my future was going to look like. The company I work for, you know, has not been untouched by those 3 months either. So who knows, man? But like I always say, you know, there are always choices. There are always choices. And, you know, if you have an idea of what you really would like to do, but also you're square with yourself on what you're good at, you know, and have some ambition at least, I think it's a good time to be alive. There's, you know, all great opportunities usually come about following some form of crisis, or, you know, I think the weather analogy is a good one, you know, which is the 3 phases of a storm. You know, you're either in a storm, coming out of a storm, or you're about to go into a storm. You know, there's no ways about it. Those are inevitable situations to be in, no matter who you are, where you're from, you know, where you are tomorrow. You know, so I'm thinking a lot those days about people back home in Swansea. I'm thinking a lot about friends all over the world, my family as well. You know, we have had a great life here, but I don't take nothing for granted. And I could quite easily come home tomorrow, back and, you know, in Swansea, and find something new tomorrow and try and find my way to make a living. You know, I'm still the same kid from Bonnie Mine who, you know, was getting his ass kicked every day in school. And, you know, yeah, man, it's an interesting time to be alive.
Definitely is. Definitely is. So if we go back to music,
yeah,
a couple more questions I'm interested in, really. Right, okay. This is a question I was going to ask earlier, but I put it off. What's the best venue you've been to, music venue?
Best music venue I've ever been to. I went to Manumission.
Okay.
I went to Manumission, which was like Disneyland. I don't think that was the best music venue. That was the biggest spectacle. You know, it was almost like a show more than a club night. You know, it was a fucking fortune to get in there. I think it was great. Like the attendance.
Did they have a sex show?
Yeah, you got it. Sex show. They had dwarfs on stilts. They had a skateboard.
Me and stilts.
They had a half-pipe skateboard park in the middle. There was a swimming pool. You know, fucking people, man, freaks. You know, people with like 3 arms, and weird fucking place. Weird.
Like a circus.
But it was a hell of an experience. But best music venue, you know, not many people know this, but Ministry of Sound in London, the box, you know, the main room, that was designed by Larry Levan, right? And Larry, Larry Levan of the Paradise Garage, I took a pilgrimage to the premises of the Paradise Garage when I was in New York one time, and the place is a car park now. You can find the address. You look it up on Wikipedia, and it's a car park now. But that car park, you can still see all the structure of the Paradise Garage. Now, Larry, is known for really three things: is production and remixing, which is like unparalleled in the disco era. His nights at the Paradise Garage, and his ability to fine-tune a sound system. And when the Ministry was opening, they called him and said, we want this club to have the absolute best sound system in the world. So they flew Larry Levan over, and he started looking at the premises and said, well, this is how you're going to do it, right? And he, to the point that he designed the speakers in the room, right? So the production company who made the speakers, they sat with Larry, and they're called the Levan horn, right? It's a horn, like the shape of a trombone, right?
Yeah.
But if you think that's like the shape of a horn, right? Like an air horn, They made these speakers that were horn shaped, and they called them the Levan horn because Larry designed those fucking things. And the box in Ministry is set up in a way that it's like acoustically perfect. They put special wood on the dance floor with special springs that would not bounce the bass too much, And Larry was there, and when Larry was there, he was already very sick,
Yeah.
And that was towards the end of his life. And I went to Ministry for the first time in '97. When I'd heard Murillo play in '97 in Pasha, we talked about it already a few times. I was like, I want to see Murillo as soon as I possibly can again. And because of his residency with Ministry, he lined up some dates in London, and he played there in the November. And I went with two guys. I went with two boys. We went up on a train, got the tube down to Elephant and Castle, stayed in a shitty hotel nearby, and then we went over to Ministry for the Subliminal night. And Murillo was playing with Jose Nunez and Harry Chucho Romero. And I remember walking into Ministry, and that was just about as close to perfection as you ever got, in terms of sound. Like, what an experience. I don't think I've been in a club that had a sound system like that. The only thing that comes close, and it's still far by some distance, is Space in Ibiza after they got rid of the terrace. Because the terrace was open, right, in Space, and you lost a lot of the sound through the air. But when they redid the terrazzo, the terrace, they closed it all in with concrete. But they lost a bit because there was still glass in there. So, what made what makes the Ministry, I haven't been for years, so maybe they changed it, I don't know. But the box, man, was perfection. It was just a beautiful room that was purposely built for the sound.
Okay. I got two more questions here.
Yeah.
And go with the easier one first.
Okay.
What two DJs would you like to see back to back with each other? From any DJ, anywhere in the world.
They have to be alive.
No.
Oh, okay. So then, look.
This is a dream team.
Back to back.
Back to back.
I'm going to choose Alive because then it's still a possibility, you know.
Okay, I may book 'em.
And then maybe you've got an idea for a future gig.
Yeah.
Back to back. That's an interesting one. You know what? The funny thing is, I never, you know, I never idolized DJs enough. I realized that, you know, to have that kind of a dream, you know. But then maybe, okay, the dream team to do it. Like if I had like, I don't know, if it's my 50th birthday and I'm like, I got unlimited funds and I can get any two DJs to come and do a back-to-back set. Yeah, it's not going to be the most popular choice probably because, you know, there's no obvious names that come to mind. But I don't know if you guys know Jamie XX, right? But this guy, he's the DJ that current time, like today, I think is the greatest DJ on the fucking planet. Right? Jamie XX, right? And he was retired for many, many years. He didn't do fucking nothing. And he just come back out of nowhere. He did an essential mix like 2 months ago.
Right.
I've listened to it about 400 times. I can't stop listening to it.
Hook me up. I've never heard him.
And I'll share. It's Jamie and Pete Tong. And funny enough, you know, I love how things always go full loop. So it's Pete Tong's essential mix. Yeah. One of my friends sent it to me and said, "Have you heard this?" And I listened to it, man. And I think I haven't laid down and listened to 2 hours of music for a very long time, you know. And this is Jamie. So I'm gonna say him. Fuck it. I want him, and I want him to go back to back with. I want him to go back to back with Dixon, German guy, Berlin, Innovision's head honcho, just on another level. I mean, if you get Dixon and Jamie XX together in like, you know, the best club on the planet, you know, whatever that is today, you know, you're going to do like, you know, Freddie Mercury at Wembley Stadium in Leiden. I mean, that's like a moment that is for me, the ages, you know?
Brilliant. So last question. Your favorite DJ of all time, and I think I probably already know this answer.
Although maybe you don't, because I know I talk a lot about you know, Murillo, Roger Sanchez, you know, those guys. But no, I'd have to say, you know, there was a lot of influences, but I didn't mention one. And to be fair, you know, I think without him, maybe a lot of people wouldn't have had the experiences they had with music or the relationship they had with music. You know, Danny Rampling, like, if you understood how much he had a hand in through the years, you know, like, and, you know, even if you look at Ibiza, right, he practically fucking built Ibiza. I mean, you know, the first club that really got an international reputation was called Shum, right? And that opened in Ibiza, you know, under him. Jeremy Healy was in there with him. And, you know, Danny was just like the typical London, well-connected DJ who knew all the producers, all the labels, all the movers and shakers, was amongst the glitterati of the dance scene. And he fucked off to Ibiza and just thought, you know what, I love this island. And it was the hippies that, you know, like idolized Danny as the DJ, and then he was the one who made Shum get this, you know, international following. And then I discovered, you know, house music through really Pete Tong. But then later I realized I didn't listen to Pete Tong's radio show as religiously as I listened to Danny Rampling's Love Groove Dance Party. And I wouldn't miss the Love Groove Dance Party. You know, I would be like, I can't do nothing on Saturday at that time because Danny Rampling's on, right? And, you know, there was a group of us who used to go to Escape together at the late 90s. And we would listen to the LGDP at home, getting ready, getting the food drinks in, and then like my mate Bruce would come and pick me up right at the minute the show would finish, and we'd get in the car and he would tape it and we'd replay the Love Groove Dance Party in the car, and we'd be like, oh my God, the power play, you know, oh my God, this week, that fucking track, man, you know, wow. And then, you know, we'd get to Escape and then probably Clifford or Byrne would have just picked that record up.
Yeah.
Because Paul Farris gave, you know, a copy to Clifford and gave a copy to Danny, so they had the same, you know, the same bloodline on the records. And then Danny, you know, Danny remained like a huge influence for years. You know, they opened a club in Leicester Square called Home, which was a bit of a flop, to be honest. It didn't really work out, and Danny was a resident. And I went a few times, but it just wasn't, I don't know, there was a lot of things that didn't really work with it. They tried to make this mega club. It was in Leicester Square. It was full of people who were more like tourists, and it just didn't work out. But I would say my favorite DJ of all time is Danny Rampling, for so many reasons.
Well, you've just gone through them, to be fair.
Yeah. For more reasons than I already said.
That's a perfect place to wrap it up.
Yeah.
We've been
for a long time, Greg.
This is by far and away the longest one we've done, and it's been probably the most emotional one we've done as well, because you've taken me to places I haven't been in these interviews for a long time.
Cool, man. Cool.
Thank you very much.
That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about.
I'm gonna get you on the stream.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'll play every record I talked about.
Well, you're gonna have to. Well, hang on. How long a fucking set do you want?
Well, I talked for 3 hours. You can imagine. You're like playing records for 3 hours. Piece of piss. Piece of piss. We do a 3-hour interview. I did say at the beginning, I don't think we're gonna run out of things to talk about. You know?
No, you did say that, to be fair. You did say it. And to be fair,
I did a flight once. I did a flight from Zurich to San Francisco, which is a 13-hour flight. Yeah. And I sat next to a guy who was into music, and we spoke the whole way from Zurich to San Francisco about music. 13 fucking hours, right? I think we stopped for like, you know, half an hour break in the middle. So yeah.
You probably didn't get into your third favorite tune then.
I don't think we even got that far. I can't talk 13 hours. I can't even. I think is the subject I can talk the most about. You know, even though there's other passions, even though there's other topics and stuff. You know, it's still very, very. You know, he's in the heart, man. It's in the heart.
It is. Thank you for your time. Greg. Thank you for your time.
It's been a pleasure, mate. It's been a pleasure.
All of it, and we will see you on the stream next week.
Yes, you will. Take care, mate. Let's keep in touch.
Top man. Much love. Take care. Ciao, bro.
Take care, mate.